You're listening to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, nonprofits, and more. Here's your host, as always, Simon Scriver.
Welcome to another episode, and my guest today is a fantastic guy who I follow and I learn a lot from. His name is Chad Barger, and for ages I've been, I suppose, putting off getting him on this podcast because I wasn't really sure what to talk to him about, and I was afraid I only get one chance with Chad, and I want to make sure I tap into the right thing. But coincidentally, one of his articles crossed my path the other day, and it was so useful because it answered this question that so many people in the sector constantly ask me, which is, what is the best CRM system to use? What database should we be using to store our details? And I thought, aha, perfect. Let's get Chad on, and maybe he can share some of his knowledge about this, because this is the guy you need to go to when you have questions like that. So we have Chad today. Hello, Chad. How are you?
Hi, Simon. Great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not too bad. You know me, always complaining.
Yeah. Is it raining?
Yeah, I was actually just caught in the rain because it's Ireland and it rains every day.
Yeah, we're having an Irish day here in central Pennsylvania, so I feel you. Yeah.
And I assume it's cold, like everywhere at the moment in the US?
Yeah, it's somewhat mild, but we're cooling back down. So
That's right. That's right. And Chad, who are you? You're an entrepreneur of sorts, a fundraising entrepreneur. What's your background?
Yeah, I've always been a fundraiser. So I'm kind of the rare breed that caught the bug early, and I changed my business major to a nonprofit focus while I was in college. About 20 years ago, right as that was kind of first becoming a thing. And since then, I've always been in nonprofit work, started in fundraising as my first job, and have never done anything else. So I worked in higher ed, the museum field, and most recently was running a arts funding, United Arts Fund here in Pennsylvania for the last decade. And then I just kind of fell into consulting work. I had my dream job, but started doing some speaking and working with groups, and just really learned to love the diversity of causes and how it could leverage my knowledge to help other groups and help the community even so much more. So
now you're full-time now on your own. Productive Fundraising is the name of you go under, is it?
Correct. Yep. I'm a productivity nerd, so I like to incorporate some of that stuff in there as well. So it's a good name for me.
So you're helping all sorts of fundraisers, all sorts of nonprofits out there becoming more productive. You share, one of the reasons I know you is because you share lots of free stuff, lots of free tips on YouTube and on your blog and everything like that. But your goal, I guess, is helping others be better.
Yeah, I've always spent my career, I started in higher education, so that was part of a 30-person development team. Mm-hmm. And then once I left there, I was always kind of on my own in small shops. So trying to do what 30 people did when it's just you. So I kind of learned some tips along the way and resources, and that's primarily who I serve through my consulting, training, and coaching. So really just giving them the tools they need so they're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
And I don't have to reinvent it either. I love sharing other people's stuff. We have mutual friends, and Jen Love and John Lepp at Agents of Good. They incredible stewardship stuff. Why do we reinvent the wheel? Just send them the right path. So my website tries to do that. And I don't love to write as much as I love to just do this and talk to people. So that's why the YouTube video formats tends to be a better fit for me.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice snippets. So this article that came across, that's someone sent to me. You didn't even send this to me. Someone else sent this to me. Was about CRMs, because you get the same question that I get a lot, which is, what's the best CRM? And people have questions about moving from those Excel spreadsheets onto an actual database. You get that a lot?
Yeah, pretty much any presentation I do, if the Q&A gets rolling, inevitably a hand goes up and it's somebody, I think we might need a database, but I don't know if it's the time and which one should we use. And I was always like, it's such a big question. There's so many variables, but I never had a great tool to send them to. There were a few articles here and there, but and I searched for probably years on just a comprehensive list of where's one place you can go that just has every option out there, so I can just, spend a whole afternoon watching demo videos and try to get some clue of, where we should maybe go, or at least narrow down the list. And I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I think all the database companies obviously don't want to advertise each other, and it changes all the time. So eventually I just got frustrated, and over a series of months just built this up. And I don't think it'll ever be complete, but eventually I just had to hit publish, and perpetual work in progress. So
it's great. It's great. Well, let's take a step back. So that question you get asked, the idea of, I think we're ready for a database. I think we're ready to move on. When are people ready to move on? When's the right time for us to bite the bullet and try and be a bit more systematic about how we store people's details?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because I think it's different everywhere. But, I look for some things like, you're doing certain fundraising activities on a regular cycle. You're not shooting from the hip anymore. Maybe you have somebody who's dedicated to this job, whether it's a staff member or a volunteer who's doing the fundraising. So somebody that could kind of maintain and manage this database. One of the worst things with databases is to put it in, everybody has admin access, and it's screwed up before, you even create a viable tool. So, you need somebody to own it. But, short of that, like, people ask, like, what revenue number do I need? And that's tough. I mean, they have expenses, so you certainly want to be making enough that it's worthwhile. But, the flip side of that question is, what are you hoping to be able to do after the database is in place that you're not now? And if there's not an answer to that, then why spend the money? Do you want your time freed up because gift entry and queries aren't going to take as long? Do you want to be able to see who your top donors are so you can go out and begin cultivating those relationships? What's that next step? And then when I hear there's next steps, there's someone to kind of manage the process, and there's at least some semblance of fundraising program there, and okay, it's time.
Because sometimes there's that pressure that organizations think they need the big, most comprehensive database that's out there because they see like American Cancer Society or Irish Cancer Society, that's what they have, and then sometimes they can't afford the training or the support after that. They don't need half of the features. And then what's happening is, I actually worked with an organization who they would just store everything on the database and export it into Excel anytime they wanted to do anything, because that was the only way they knew how to do it.
Yeah, it's a glorified filing cabinet, right?
Yeah.
Not what you want. So that's my question. What are you going to do with it? And getting the one that's the right size for you. So even for the long time, I resisted actually endorsing anything because I thought, it's different for everybody. That has changed because I find there's a tool that works for many groups, but still not all. And you really have to test it out, figure out what your needs are, what do you want it to do, and then not just watch a YouTube video of a guy walking through it. That's a great first step, but you actually need to get access and play with it for yourself. So a lot of them will offer, it's called a sandbox. So it's basically access to the whole product with all its features with dummy data put in there. So just fake, 300 fake donor entries and donations. So you can run queries and tests and data entry and process a test credit card transaction and see what it would actually be like before you make the commitment and you're stuck with this thing.
So think about, so people should be thinking about, okay, what exactly do we need to do with this that we can't already do, and then actually reaching out to these companies, these database companies, and saying, can we have a play around with this? Can we test it?
Right. They'll do, I usually do a live demo, either a group, a lot of them do it once a week, or they'll do one-on-ones, so you can ask your questions. But, somebody showing you how to do it versus you actually doing it, it's really different. They do this probably 10 times a day for different people. They can do it in their sleep. You get in there and all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's 10 clicks and I got to change all these settings to make it work. And well, they showed me the front end that's gorgeous. When I actually have to change a setting or set up a new campaign, it takes like a half hour and it's real pain in the butt, Just dig in. You're going to be stuck with this tool. Most of these are contracts and big commitments. Give it the due diligence. Make sure you're actually going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes you get that idea, that experience of like the person who's picking the database isn't even necessarily the person who's using it. I've seen, I mean, even myself, I walked into an organization as the new head of fundraising, and the CEO and the board and the finance had picked the database to walk into. As it turned out, it was okay, but I've seen that in other organizations where it's not the user who's even picking the database.
Yeah, that's not fun. That's just like a development committee reviewing a fundraising appeal. It's like instant death to anything effective there. So, yeah, you got to be part of that conversation. Find a way. Yeah, I mean, there's internal politics and everything going on there, but you are the end tool, and maybe it's just a question of, all right, what are you going to need me to get you from this?
Yeah.
What kind of data are you going to look at? And then approach it that way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure this tool will actually give us that data. But trying to see what their needs are and then merging them with your needs and just figuring out a way to be a part of that process.
Are you finding like there is a huge difference between what these databases can do?
No, I mean, the list is probably 30 plus databases at this point. And, I have not demoed them all. I've probably looked at, at least a third of them over the years. There's definitely similarities. I mean, there's base things they all do. They all record constituents and their contact information. They record donations, how they link those. They get more and more advanced. Some can do hard credits, soft credits, queries, reports, built-in functionality, what they track. It's just, like you said, it's a matter of how much do you need. If it's your first database and you just need a place so you're not dealing with 13 Excel spreadsheets and all kinds of duplicate data and wrong addresses, a simple base model probably will cut it. And some of them even have free options that start until you reach a certain threshold with, so many donor records or so much revenue. You don't need the one with all the bells and whistles. That can be, 5-10 years from now, we have more staff, we have more need. That might be a better option.
Yeah, and then you're looking at a database that kind of grows with you, in terms of how much it's going to cost you and in terms of add-ons and extras that it can maybe do for you.
Right, yeah.
Can we dive into this list a little bit and just maybe kind of flick through and see some of the ones that jump out at us and start to get an idea for what people should be asking and what they're looking at?
Yeah, sure.
So this list is on Chad's blog. I'm going to link to it in the podcast. You'll see it. His website is productivefundraising.com. And there's a whole section, a whole page dedicated to these, where he kind of shows some videos of them, shows some reasons he likes them, talks about his own experience. It's really, really worth checking out. And the first one that you've got on the top of the list, I don't know if this is because it's alphabetical order or because it's one of your favorites, but you've got Bloomerang up here.
Yeah, and I confessed right in the blog that it's roughly alphabetical order, but I start with a few of my favorites and ones that I have experience with. So Bloomerang rises to the top currently. I've implemented it at 2 nonprofits and I've referred a couple clients to it. Everybody seems to have a pretty good experience with it. It's very similar to some other options. The few things that set it apart for me are they really include thought leaders in the actual development process. So, Tom Ahern, Kivy LaRue Miller,
Adrian Sargent, I think.
Yeah, Adrian Sargent, so they take their thoughts and they actually kind of incorporate that into the architecture. Like as soon as you log in on your dashboard, it shows your donor retention rate up to the minute right there.
Wow. Okay.
And when you're writing a letter, you can do the U check and the grade level check, right in it. So, are they things you have to have that you can't do otherwise? No, but they're conveniences that save a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And the other thing I love, I spent 10 years in the arts and I have a, appreciation for those kinds of things. It's just a pretty database. It's just, you're going to spend all day looking at it. You don't want some ugly thing. And so that's the front end. And there's lots of things that are pretty, but the thing I love about them too is the back end. So when you have to go in and change a setting, it's intuitive, it's easy, things are there. It doesn't take an hour to do that. So it's pretty user-friendly both ways. So is it the right tool for everybody? No, you still have to check it out, but I think it's a good starting point for some people.
Yeah, I have a lot of time for it, not just because I'm friends with Steven and Bloomerang is kind of a friend of the podcast. My problem with it is that it's not available in Ireland.
No.
So we can't get it over here. But everything I've seen about it, I like it. Again, like you said, is it right? I mean, I suppose the whole thing about this is there isn't one answer. Otherwise, it'd be very
Exactly.
easy. But it's like, what's the best band? What's the best movie? It depends on kind of what you're looking for and who you are. But I like it.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do with this guide is, first to talk about how to select the best one and link to some resources on, what kind of questions should you be asking. Mark Pittman has a good article out on that. Just what do I ask these people when I get on a demo? Where are the minefields I'm looking for? And Bloomerang puts out a good guide. It's actually called How Not to Choose Fundraising. Tell you everything you shouldn't do. Just, getting your mind right before you start looking at options is really the key in my mind.
That's good. That's good. All right, moving down the list, I can see Neon CRM, which I've never used.
Neon's a pretty good tool. I find their pricing pretty competitive for smaller groups. Works pretty well. I'm using it with a campaign I'm working on right now. So it's fun. The only thing I don't like about them is I find their back end a little more challenging to set up. But it's the right option for some people.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Wild apricot. Would you say apricot or apricot?
I would say apricot, but we still use Fahrenheit over here, so who knows?
Yeah, I can never tell with you Americans.
Yeah. I think it changes state to state too, so who knows?
Have you've used this one yourself?
I have not used this tool, but I have several membership organizations, like statewide association type groups, and they really love this for managing, memberships, not just straight donations, but that. And the other thing I love them is they're just really involved with the industry. Their staff, is always putting out free resources, and like they have this giant list of all the free nonprofit webinars available every month. So it's a great blog too, and that's always a good sign to me that if people do more than just show up at the conference and hawk their products, but are actually involved in research and guides, and they're just going to be there when you call on them and have a problem. So
yeah, I mean, I've been at conferences where you see speakers. That's a really good point. And some speakers are very salesy, and they're really talking about their database and really pushing it as if it's gospel. And then others are really just teaching you, how to fundraise. They're sharing data, they're sharing research, and it's like they come across sometimes they can take or leave whether you use the database. And for me, that always instills confidence when they're just about good fundraising.
Right. The product can stand for itself. I'm going to teach you how to use whatever you use, and hopefully the next time you're looking, you look at us too. So.
Yeah. I've seen speakers from the next one. I mean, this seems like your topper at the top. FrontStream Panorama, and GiftWorks Cloud. Is that one of your top ones?
Yeah, well, I just it's not currently one of my top ones, but I just have to kind of give it a shout out that GiftWorks was actually founded kind of in the next town over from me, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as a startup, and I was an early user of it about a decade ago. Put it in place at a couple organizations, and it was a really great tool. And I still love it at its heart. I know an organization in town that I occasionally work with that still has the base, kind of the older model. It was a really good tool, but this is another thing you have to watch out with. Sometimes companies get taken over and the focus can shift a little bit. So they got bought out a number of years ago. And, for me, it was always a database good for small shops that was always evolving. And then it kind of shifted to more like a credit card focus online, which just didn't match as well for the organizations that already had it. So, and kind of all the evolution went in that direction. So I understand they've relaunched and are trying to change that back. So definitely worth a look, just because there's that history there of, great service for decades. But.
Nice. All right. I'm not going to go through every single one by one, because it's funny. Yeah, like there's so many, you start to alphabetize them in your list, and you've got stuff I've never heard of, and just funny name. Abila, Millennium, Aplos, Ariva. It makes you wonder what you would call a database if you set up your own one. But I think one here I definitely have to mention is Blackboard, because I mean they've got to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, with their Razor's Edge, with eTapestry, which I used to use in the last nonprofit I was an in-house member of staff on. What's your view on Blackboard?
Yeah, Blackboard, it seems to be like a love-hate relationship in the industry. You're either like all in, or you're like, oh, they're huge, and
Yeah.
But I think in recent years they've really tried to get ahead of that, and I know they're one of these companies that they're on the forefront with research. They're there and really looking into things. Their head data scientist is always doing great blog posts and things. So they're there. Do I think they're tilted a little more towards large organizations? Probably, yeah. Your first database probably, and I'll probably get a call about this, but it probably is not that. But until they prove me wrong and show that. But is it a great option for a mid-sized organization that has a couple of fundraising staff? Yeah, it can do everything. You might want somebody that's kind of a data geek on staff there, because you really want to get everything out of it, because all the bells and whistles are in there.
They're funny. I mean, I have really mixed feelings about them, and sometimes I have that love and hate with them sometimes. And again, we got to be we're in a caring sector, so we have to be nice about this. But I had terrible experiences with like Razor's Edge in terms of the support I got, in terms of it just being maybe too big for an organization I was in before. But having said that, I know people who love it and who swear by it, and it's almost become a meme in our sector, Razor's Edge. But eTapestry I actually really liked, and I don't know. I mean, it's not a million miles away from Razor's Edge, but something about it was priced in a way that we actually used it as our first database, and I found it pretty easy to use, and it did everything I needed. And actually, even now, I recommend eTapestry sometimes to people in Ireland. It just works.
Yeah, and that's the key. It has to work, and it has to work for you. It's not somebody else saying, this is the perfect thing, you need this, but you actually have to test it. Get in there, see how it works. Razor's Edge, I had a client kind of saying the love-hate thing just with you, that they were on a previous version. I don't know if it was straight Razor's Edge, but they weren't on the NXT. Yeah. And they converted to that in the last couple months, and it was like night and day for them. All of a sudden, they can get out what they want. And so, I think the product is evolving to, make it more user-friendly, easier for folks that might not be as techy.
I think they had a challenge, Razor's Edge, because it was around for so long that, fundraising changed. Like almost like online was invented in the lifetime of Razor's Edge. And so suddenly they were having to add on so many things to take into account. And when you keep adding on like that, it just becomes a big hairy mess.
Yeah, it's clunky.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas when you have the luxury of starting from scratch, from the beginning what needs to be in it, and it works. And that's the luxury that other databases has, and maybe the Razor's Edge NXT, that's maybe the luxury they've had.
No, definitely. So they're there, and I'm going to put a plug out right now. I do not claim this to be the comprehensive, every single option is on here. So when I put this out a couple weeks ago, I got probably at least 10 different notes from people of, oh, I use this, or what about this one? So I've added those, and if they have an easy to find demo video on YouTube, that's in here as well. So if your favorite database is not in here, or of a demo video I don't have, let me know. It's just chad@productivefundraising.com, or shoot me a note on the website form. Like I said, it's evolving, and I hope to keep this resource up to date for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's such a great resource, but I also think you're going to be haunted to your grave with this, because you're going to get people contacting you and telling you how wrong you are, and how you're missing one little bit, and how something's changed in the last 5 minutes, and you're never going to escape this now, Chad.
Well, it's I guess it's the grave I've dug. So here we go. And
who else do we need to flag in this? Let's read through a few of them. Classy, Clearview, Donorperfect is one that I think a lot of people have heard of. That's pretty well known over here.
Yeah, Donorperfect. I only ever had one client used it, and I haven't really dug in enough to give a personal vouch for it. Yeah, I know you have to have some training and know how to work that back end. But yeah, great tool that many people are happy with.
Very good.
This next one, Donor Snap, is a new one to me, and on my list of ones to check out. I was talking with Pamela Grow the other day, and she was saying this is really becoming a favorite one of a lot of her clients, especially kind of that small first step. You see the cover page of their video here. It says crazy affordable, crazy efficient, and organized. So it's a pretty good combination.
That works,
so, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why her clients look. I've never used this one. I've got to check this out.
Yeah, so
that sounds good.
The schedule calms down here a little bit. I got to get a video scheduled or a demo scheduled on that one. So
yeah. Another big one that obviously we have to mention that you've got on here is Salesforce, because I mean a huge percentage of our sector are using this because of the affordability of it, and because they're just a monster that they've obviously got their profit making wing.
Yes,
which
the
allows
machine will make sure you check it out. So
now I definitely Salesforce I would say is a friend of mine, and I'll just kind of disclose that. And I've worked with people who have been absorbed into Salesforce. I don't think you get hired by Salesforce; you get absorbed by it, and then you never stop talking about Salesforce.
Yeah. I personally have not used it, but I've seen places. Especially where I find is if it's like a new executive director coming in and they were in sales in the for-profit sector, they know the tool, they love it, and there's just not as much of a learning curve. They just kind of get the language. So, definitely startups or people coming from a business scene certainly be a good tool. But other than that, I can't really vouch either way for it.
Yeah, I mean, I am a fan of it. I do like the database. I do like their approach, even though they're, a big bad capitalist swine of a company like all the other profit-making companies. They still do come across as this, like they come across to me as kind of generous with their time. They put a lot into volunteering, a lot into donations, and a lot into support to make it really like free or affordable sometimes. But again, sometimes it's almost too big for users. And again, it depends on what you're looking for and who you are, I think. Yeah,
and we're just about at the bottom of the list here, but the one other one that we skimmed over a little bit, that another one I don't have a ton of experience with, but some of my clients say as a first database, they really like Little Green Light, which just seems to be pretty agile and basic and good pricing for some startup groups too.
Little Green Light. I mean, that rings a bell, and I think it's through you. I don't think I've ever seen it in action. I don't think I've ever used it.
That's another one I need to take a deeper dive on sometime soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to this for everyone, and obviously, if anyone wants to reach out to you, I would recommend you, Chad, as one of the experts, even if he hasn't used something particular. Generally, I find he can point you in the right direction and introduce you to the right people to test it out or get their opinion. I mean, I think the whole thing about these databases that we're kind of skirting around is why we're using them, why we're using them instead of Excel. And I mean, it's really to be a better fundraiser and, to steal the name of your company, a more productive fundraiser, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to spend all your time at your desk, shuffling spreadsheets, doing mail merges to get your gift acknowledgement letters out, and, you want that to take as little time as possible. Ideally, you have someone else that does it, but you still want it to take as little of their time as possible. But why? The why is so you can be out forming relationships. So you can be out deepening those donor relationships, finding new supporters, telling your organization's story. But I really find that doesn't happen unless you prioritize that. There's always something to do at your desk. There's always a grant to write, or I can research this, but you can research the donor to death before you even go have a conversation with them. So prioritization for that. And that's so often when I work with a client, like, yeah, there's the things we need to fix. They're talking about themselves and the appeal and not their donors and not impact, or, still sending the 30-page annual report with lists of donor names. There's the tactical things, but oftentimes there's just this barrier of they're a complete train wreck when it comes to productivity, and they're spending all their time in email and they don't have a social media plan, or the time just goes. So a lot of times I just have to kind of find their productivity style. And that's a key for me, is everybody has a style. We have a mutual friend, and Alice Ferris, who was on the podcast not too long ago. And you let it slip to me that you are intimidated by her productivity prowess. And on top of that, I agree. But yeah, so that's not your style. But you can still be productive. You just have to know your style. And maybe it's more low key, but you still have to have knowledge and know that you're focusing in the right areas. So.
Well, I mean, she's the queen of productivity, and it's kind of scares me. It makes you think that you're wasting all your time. I kind of get that feeling sometimes when I look at all your YouTube videos and blogs and all your speaking things. I imagine people get that feeling sometimes when they look at me, because it's just the way I present myself. But productivity is a hard thing. And in our sector, I find with fundraising, there's so many things you could be doing. And to some level, everything you do helps fundraising. It progresses your fundraising, that it becomes that instead, how do you use your time? How do you spend your 40 hours or 50 hours a week? How do you actually prioritize to be the most productive fundraiser? How do you do that?
Yeah, as a starting point, a lot of times, when I just get in there and they become reactive. Like they don't know what to do. There's too much to do. So they're just dealing with the squeaky wheel at the moment. What's yapping, what's biting the ankles the most, and how do I get that to go away? So I'll have them step back and say, well, let's get your plan. Let's get your goal. What do you need to do? What are the top 3 activities you could do to get you closer to this? And inevitably it's like, go out and meet with more donors, get the more volunteers engaged in the process, it's those kind of things. So then we say, okay, if you're going to do that, you need to set time aside on your schedule for each of these 3 activities. So a lot of times I'll recommend time blocking. People don't love to have everything scheduled to the minute, but give me 3 2-hour blocks in your week. And this block, every Monday morning from 9 to 11 is going to be priority number 1. And I'm just going to shove it forward every single week. Yeah. And it's not going to be instant progress at first, but over time, we're going to get that done. Yeah. And this has to be sacred time. Like, this is locked.
You got to be ruthless with it and not get, because there's always something else. There's always something else.
Maybe it doesn't have to be 9 to 11 every Monday, but if that gets bumped, then it goes to another time. Okay. So I spend 2 hours on that every single week. Yeah. And for me, donor visits are the big thing. So, I usually tell people block a whole afternoon every week, but that's not enough, because if you just block a whole afternoon every week, then the next week will come, you'll get there and you'll be sitting in your office because you didn't take the time to actually schedule your donor visits. So, you need some time set aside to actually get them locked in as well. So. Yeah. Yeah. But when people are just struggling, that seems to start getting them down the process. And I'll plug a book too. This is a book by Carson Tate, and it helps people figure out their productivity style. And they actually go through an assessment, and they can learn, what kind of tools might work well for me, rather than just mimicking what I say or, what Alex Ferris says or other people that they seem to think are really good at productivity. Yeah. That book's called Work Simply.
Work Simply. Okay, I'll put a link to it into the podcast as well so people can find it easy.
Yeah, so if they're looking to dig a little more, that's also sometimes a nice starting point, because people will go out and they'll buy Getting Things Done by David Allen or these, whole systems. Yeah. But that might not be what works for them. So find something that actually matches your style.
It's actually acknowledging that people are different and people have different ways that they're going to be most effective.
Yeah. And when you go to, these blogs and things, usually they're called personal productivity blogs. And the keyword there is personal. It's not one size fits all, just like it's not one size fits all database. It's, figure out what works for your organization, figure out what works for you.
I like that. Anything else work for you on a personal level? Anything else that you found kind of revolutionized the way you're using your time?
I'm techie. So I like everything digital, except when I'm in a meeting. When I'm in a meeting, I like having a pen and paper in front of me. It's just more personal and that kind of thing. But as soon as I'm out of that meeting, any action items are right in my system, because then I can sleep at night, knowing that everything is accounted for, taken care of. So I have a to-do list. I use Evernote. Everything can kind of talk to each other. I can get it on any device. And that just works for me. Not everybody needs that. And I think my other thing is always being able to capture stuff. One of my favorite productivity gurus is a guy by the name of Mike Vardy, and he runs a blog called Productivityist. And his big quote is, your mind is meant to be a factory, not a warehouse. So it's meant to actually process and do stuff, not just store all your crap. So get it out of there, get it into someplace it's there later. Your to-do list shouldn't be in your head. So and you can just be more agile and think, and much better situation. So I have a capture device everywhere. That's my my other big thing. So I always have a way to get it out of my head. And the one I get the most, flack or heckling about is my tool for the shower. So about 5 years ago, I stole one of my boys' bath crayons. Yeah. And so I just keep that in the shower, and you get great ideas in the shower.
What do you?
I just grab the crayon and I write it right on the wall, and then I don't forget it. So many times I get out of the shower and be like, oh, what was that idea?
Yeah.
And then once a week, my to-do list tells me to go up and look in the shower wall and see if there's any incredible thoughts there.
How long are your showers, Chad?
No, it's not too bad, but it's just
that's amazing.
You're relaxed. Your mind can actually process stuff.
I'd say other people are getting into the shower after you, like, what the hell is this on the wall? It's like red rum.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My wife actually, I had a red bath crayon in the shower last Halloween. She actually did it. She wrote red rum in giant letters on the shower wall with all these streaks coming down. So yeah, I'll have it on my Facebook. It was classic. So
that's a good reminder. All right. Well, you're a productive man, Chad, so I'm not going to keep you any longer because I know you got loads to do. If people, I'm obviously going to put a link into the database stuff and into your website. Where else can people find you? Where do you push out your message to people?
Yeah, so the website's a great tool, just productivefundraising.com, and there's a link at the top that says free fundraising tips, and the blog's there, these guides are there. I have a whole library of all kinds of templates, downloads, and stuff, both mine and other people's. Great content. My list is on there. I do usually twice a week send out maybe a quick tip video, a free resource, link to somebody's article. I try to make it visual and fun and attractive, so it's not more text we have to read. So that's on there. And on the channels, I'm at Fundraiser Chad. So, Insta, Facebook, try to hang out a little bit while still being productive at the same time. So always a challenge.
You're everywhere. Well, I've really appreciated the free stuff you put out through your mailing list, through your YouTube channel, through everywhere. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and actually share a bit of your knowledge as well. I appreciate it for such a productive gent.
Oh, well, thank you, Simon. No problem. Happy to share your stuff too. I encourage people to go down the paperclip journey all the time, and always cite you on that one. So
I appreciate that. I think that's what I'm going to be remembered for, is paperclips and chicken nuggets. That seems to be my legacy.
There's worse things. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. All right. Listen, thanks a million, Chad. Lovely to see you. Lovely to talk to you. And we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks again, Simon.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't. Whatever. You're big enough to make your own decisions.
Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. For discounts on Simon's best-selling online fundraising courses, go to www.changefundraising.com/training and use coupon code podcast. Complete them in your own time, wherever you want. Get busy living or get busy buying.